Oh, hi there everyone. I have been testing out the new Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra in the real world for almost 2 full weeks now. I personally am in the market for a new phone and am deciding if this is the next phone that's right for me. So I have a lot of thoughts. Let's start with the hardware. The Galaxy S26 Ultra is the slimmest Ultra yet, and it feels really good in the hand. Despite being a very tiny person, I like a larger phone. It's lighter because it's made with aluminum instead of the titanium we've seen in previous versions. Now, it comes in a bunch of colors, and while I typically prefer a really out there bright color, I personally like the violet that I have here, the best of the bunch. There's a physical SIM card slot. Yay! I find that easier and more reliable than eSIMs, just personally, so I was excited to see that. There's no micro SD slot or headphone jack or removable battery, although it's been a few generations since we've seen those features. I can still wish for them though. The S Pen is slimmer. It also is now curved on the edge to fit in with the new shape of the phone. I keep actually accidentally putting it in backwards, like I just did right there. No lie, as an OG Galaxy Note fan, I miss the more rectangular shape and flat bottom to differentiate the Ultra from the rest of the line. But I think I'm in the minority there since I've talked to lots of folks that love the more uniform look across the lineup. Now, the Galaxy S26 Ultra is powered by the new Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 for Galaxy, with an NPU for onboard AI, GPU for nice graphics and ray tracing, and CPU to make sure you have a nice experience, and all that delivers so far in my testing. I have the most affordable storage option here with the 256 gigabytes of storage and 12 gigabytes of RAM, although you can choose other pricier configurations with up to 1 terabyte and 16 gigabytes of RAM as well. The battery is a 5,000 milliamp battery, so no changes there in terms of size, but we've now got much faster charging. 60-watt charging plugged in, which will take you 0 to 75% in 30 minutes, or 25-watt wireless charging. There's no magnetic back to align on wireless chargers though, unless you add a case that does that for you. But look at this. When I added the official Samsung case for this purpose, I got a little notification saying it may affect the functionality of the S Pen because it too uses magnetic technology. Interesting. I've been using the S Pen and the case together without issues so far, but I wonder if this is why the Galaxy S26 Ultra doesn't have a MagSafe-like feature from the get-go. Is it a worthy trade-off? I don't know. I would side S Pen over magnets hands down, except there's no Bluetooth functionality in the S Pen, which I am very sad about. The Galaxy S24 Ultra and newer had Bluetooth in the pen, and it was perfect as a remote shutter for solo photo and video shoots, which I do as a content creator all the time. Now I either need to use the built-in palm or voice shutter activations, like saying cheese out in public, which aren't ideal for trying to get photos done fast, or I need to buy an accessory like the Galaxy Watch or Ring or third-party shutter to make this happen. Now, I know people that have used the Bluetooth on the S Pen to advance slides and presentations and all sorts of other things. The Samsung folks that I spoke to about it at Galaxy Unpacked said that their research shows not a lot of folks use the Bluetooth functionality in the S Pen, especially if they're power users who have the Galaxy Ring and or Watch, so they prioritized other things. My assumption is cost and thinness, but I will forever hope they bring it back because it was one of my favorite features. Now, since the device is so thin, they've redesigned the vapor chamber cooling, and that definitely helps out when gaming on the phone too. Gaming overall has been a nice experience on this phone between the CPU, GPU, cooling, and super nice display. So let's talk about the display. The Galaxy S26 Ultra has a 6.9-inch display, 3120 by 1440p, 120 Hz adaptive refresh rate like before. There are new software enhancements to make things sharper, and the colors, I have to say, are absolutely gorgeous on this phone. One of the most talked about features on this phone, however, is the privacy display. This is very, very cool, innovative tech with some real-world caveats. When activated, the screen adjusts to narrow the pixels so the light is visible from straight on, but not from the side. So no looky-loos can see what you're doing. Now, I see this being great for commuters, getting work done, or anyone who wants to game in peace without feeling judged by their choice of game. It works super well, and even more impressive, it can be turned on situationally for certain private apps or entering PIN codes, and even just for certain parts of the screen. Now, I noticed when I first turned it on, the screen does dim a bit and lose some of its impressive clarity and color spectrum. This was quickly noticeable within the first hour of my testing it, and due to that, for me at least, it's not something I'd want to have on the whole screen all the time. Right now, I have my settings set for banking apps and pins and passwords and notifications only, and that's the perfect balance for me. Regardless of how you use it, it's a very cool option to have this at a hardware level. Now let's go ahead and talk about the cameras, because I spent a lot of time testing here. Like the previous generation, there are 5 total cameras, 4 on the back, 1 on the front. Same sensors, but now with wider aperture on the main 200 megapixel camera and the telephoto camera to allow in more light and therefore more detail. The photos I took all came out great. Part of this is due to the updated customized photo processing on both the rear and front-facing cameras to give more even lighting on the face and more flattering skin colors and textures. There's lots of optional touch-up selfie features in addition to that if you choose to use them for those days when, I don't know, you may not have gotten enough sleep or you just want to look extra fancy. For low-light photos, or nightography, as Samsung likes to say, the processing is now customized for each lens, so the low-light shots are really nice. This is one that I took in low light at Samsung Unpacked with the front-facing cam on the wide angle setting, and it looks really good. Before I talk about video, I want to talk about the camera and the editing software on the S26 Ultra, because I think that's just as important as the camera hardware in producing the final result. For me, Pixel phones used to be the king in terms of on-device editing. I would take the picture on my Samsung Ultra and then edit it on the Pixel. The last couple software updates for Google Photos have completely mucked up what used to be a great photo editing experience, in my opinion. But that left the door open for Samsung to come right on in and steal the show, and I think they did. Removing unwanted items, editing from a text prompt, resizing images, and more look pretty gosh darn convincing most of the time. The Photo Assist will let you combine photos, like let's say you see a cool shirt online and you want to see what it would look like on yourself, you can now digitally try it on by using Photo Assist to combine those photos. Now, there's a whole discussion to be had about the ethical implications of altering photos this easily. You obviously do not need to use any of these features if you don't want to. There's lots of generative AI features as well to, let's say, make you look like a cartoon character or change the background, but that's not really something I find myself having a need for regularly. That being said, Samsung's new Creative Studio app goes that extra step in helping you turn those types of edits into something that might actually be usable, like a sticker or a party invitation. Now, let's talk about the video. The Galaxy S26 Ultra has a ton of new and returning features here as well. Probably the biggest wow feature you may have seen is horizontal lock, which is the next step up from Super Steady in terms of image stabilization. It's pretty stinking impressive, and you may have seen oodles of folks showing it off by turning it around and filming themselves in a mirror online. Apparently it's called the S26 trend at this point. But fun fact, apparently Vivo phones had this feature like 5 years ago, but since Vivo phones aren't sold or widely known in the United States, many folks here didn't know about it. So it feels new here, which is why you're seeing all the hype. Anyway, it's a cool feature if you have a lot of movement when recording and want a much more Steadicam type look to the final video. Auto framing is a returning feature, but it now will work with 4K video instead of only 1080p, and the video zoom is still really impressive. Look at that sea otter, he's so cute. Sidebar, I drove up the California coast with my mom and dad and family recently, so I had lots of opportunities to test all these features. Samsung now has some really pro-level video options in their APV mode, or Advanced Professional Video. This allows for visually lossless quality videos even after multiple rounds of edits. And I've seen pro videographers make some really stunning results already with this, applying LUTs and fine-tuning to get exactly the result they want. In fact, the entire Samsung Unpacked launch event was filmed on the S26 Ultra devices, and I imagine they were using a lot of these very high-end, more pro settings when they did that. Audio Erasure is another feature that's back, but now instead of just eliminating unwanted background noise from your videos that you capture, you can also turn this on when you're watching something else. that may have background noise. Like if you're watching a YouTube video and you want to hear the speaker more clearly and there's a lot of noise in the background, you can just swipe down and turn it on from the settings. So that's fun.
We felt like we had our own medieval tavern. So this is much higher than a traditional bar top would be. I am in heels right now.
In terms of the user interface, Samsung uses One UI 8.5. Now, I've always been someone who prefers a clean Android UI, but Samsung has really fine-tuned their experience over the years and added oodles of customization options. If you want to get a feel for it on your own phone, you can interact with a simulation of that experience and some of the new features by going to trygalaxy.com. I really like that Samsung offers this because I think for most people, the user interface is a major reason why you would choose one phone over another. It also lets you try photo assist, enhanced nightography, etc. So check it out if you're curious. As someone who has not used a Samsung device as my primary driver in generations, here are some things that I noticed. The edge panel on the side is only customizable at the bottom, and I keep triggering it accidentally when trying to swipe back while browsing the internet or swiping through an Instagram carousel. I may end up just turning it off since I don't really see myself using these top non-changeable apps very frequently. As a forever green bubble Android gal, I love all the customization options though. So maybe that is the perfect solution for you. The amount of widgets and home screen options, app icons, and themes are awesome. I'm keeping this one mostly simple for test purposes, but may change that later on. Bixby is your on-device assistant to help you navigate phone features or more broadly in conjunction with Perplexity AI. Or you can streamline things if you prefer Gemini, or none of the above. Again, the more options for consumers, the merrier, in my opinion. Some of the newer agentic AI features include Now Nudge, which should suggest appropriate next step type options for you, like offering to call you an Uber if you're running late for an appointment, or adding a calendar appointment based on a text chain conversation. Now, to get this feature to work, you need to use all the Samsung ecosystem apps like Samsung Calendar, Samsung Keyboard, Samsung Gallery, etc. And even with all the AI features enabled, I had a hard time getting this feature to work. This may be more present in future updates, but I'm not sure that the extra bit of AI helpfulness is worth it to this SwiftKey keyboard gal. The Samsung keyboard just doesn't hit the same for me, but maybe that'll change the more I keep trying it out. FYI, there's a toggle in Galaxy AI settings to process data only on device. It is turned off by default. I recommend turning that on if you don't want your data to be collected for AI training. Samsung did add some features that I really enjoy from other phones, like built-in document scanning, screenshot organization, and assistant call screening, which I cannot live without after using Pixel phones the last few generations. Begone, spam calls! Seriously, such a quality of life improvement. I can't go back. Finally, there's Now Brief and Now Bar, your early morning, midday, and evening AI brief to fill you in on what it decides is the most important info. You can customize it to be about what you care about seeing. So far, I haven't been able to customize this to be super useful for me, but with more everyday use, like longer than 2 weeks, as it learns me and it learns my habits more, I imagine this will get more helpful if you choose to keep all these things enabled. So, is the Samsung Galaxy S26 worth the upgrade or worth switching from another ecosystem? If you're considering upgrading from another Samsung device, it depends which features you prioritize and how good your trade-in value offer is. If you have an S24 Ultra and love the more square Galaxy Note-esque aesthetic and Bluetooth S Pen, then you may not want to upgrade if those features are more important to you than the privacy screen, or horizontal lock, or pro video recording. If you have an S25 Ultra and get a really good trade-in value and know you'll use that privacy display on every commute, then that would probably be worth it to you. It's a premium phone with a price point starting at $1,299, so it's not a decision to take lightly for most people. If you're switching from another phone manufacturer or ecosystem, know that any UI and ecosystem transfer is typically unpleasant, even with dedicated apps like Samsung Smart Switch out there to help smooth out the process. Weigh out the pros and cons of each system to see what makes sense for you. Will I switch from Pixel? Yes, I think so. While both of these phones take excellent photos, I like the photos a little better on the S26 Ultra, even though the front-facing camera on the Pixel technically has more megapixels. I like the S Pen for photo and video editing precision, and for the slightly unfair advantage it gives me in Jackbox drawing games. I don't necessarily love the more complex UI, although I may prefer it once it learns my daily habits and I find my own workarounds for things. I love that I don't have to give up call screening or a physical SIM card slot. Coming from a Pixel 9 Pro XL, it will be both a display and storage upgrade for me, as well as a CPU upgrade and hopefully run cooler, although it's winter now when I'm testing it and most of my Pixel overheating issues happen in the summer, so jury's still out on that one. At just under 2 weeks, I'm still transferring things over ecosystem-wise from stock Android to One UI and trying to decide which apps I prefer from both. Luckily, it's all Android, so I have both options available. Samsung versus Google Calendar, Samsung Gallery versus Google Photos, Samsung Health versus Google Fit and Fitbit, etc. Samsung Keyboard versus Google Keyboard and SwiftKey. For the time being, I'm carrying both and doing a slow switchover with the ultimate goal of moving fully to the Galaxy S26 Ultra. For anyone curious, I didn't upgrade from the Pixel 9 Pro XL to the Pixel 10 Pro XL because they removed the physical SIM card slot, and I just didn't think it was a big enough hardware improvement over the 9 Pro XL to be worth the hefty price tag. This phone has served me well, but for now, I'm making the switch. So what do you think? Is it worth it for you, or are you holding out for the next feature drop or hardware improvement? And if so, what types of features or hardware improvements would sway you? I'll do my best to answer any questions in the comments. I tried to talk about everything I could think of, but I'm sure there are things I missed, so ask those questions away. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.